Whoa, I think I'm making a video. Yeah. Alright, another one of these third-party videos while I'm cleaning kind of thing, or just reorganizing the clutter a little bit. Didn't wake up in time to put the garbage out. It's kind of stupid. Anyway, these gifts for Piro. Anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah, so, you know, the second platform item, you know, would be another be another democracy change. You know, the first you do the instant runoff voting thing, get that passed, and you know, get rid of that spoiler crud, and that way you open up the third party thing. Is then third parties can at least get elected, you know, for president and stuff. You wouldn't have the Ralph Nader problem. So you could have other third party candidates that actually have a chance to win, because we all wouldn't worry about, you know, getting George Bush elected kind of thing. I mean, I would have voted for Nader, but, you know, I was smart enough to know you don't want George Bush to be president. But anyway, you know, but obviously the other Nader supporters, some of the other Nader supporters couldn't figure that out and doomed us to horror. But anyway, it doesn't, you know, that's the secondary subject. The other point is this: there's another element to the democracy reform, which is having real representation, you know, instead of this winner-take-all congressional election stuff, which ends up giving us the same, basically the same people run in every election, the same majority gets to decide in every state, so you really don't have representation. You know, I've used the cigarette smoker example, but there's lots of examples. The only way black people, you know, end up with representation is because of segregation, you know, because they live in condensed areas. So if, you know, theoretically, you could have a very, you could have a minority of 30 or 40 million people, and they won't have representation because they're not segregated in a district somewhere in a state. So it just makes sense to have the ideological freedom to vote your ideology, you know, not to vote what you believe in, not where you live. There has to be a better balance of these two interests. I mean, you do have some local interests, but it's not like the old days where, you know, all politics was local. It just isn't. 99% of the stuff I care about has absolutely nothing to do with where I live, and it's not getting represented. I've never had a congressman, and that's another offense to the system, is you don't need a winner-take-all. You don't need to disenfranchise half the American people in the Congress. You don't need to take away their representation. You have enough seats where you can let everybody have their fair share. You can let everybody have a real representative. Not somebody they hate, not somebody they despise. I mean, the very idea that I have a congressman that I despise. He considers me his constituent, and yet I despise him. I mean, he is the anti-politician, the anti-philosophy from my perspective. And here he claims to have the weight of my sanction. He claims that, in a way, he represents my reality, and he represents none of it. So anyway, I go into all this crap in the on the IRV channel, so I'll post a link to that, so you can get videos on that subject. It's not as complicated as it seems, but it's always difficult to explain just how far off the mark the system we have is. And you should be able to understand that it's probably isn't the best system, but you should be able to understand that it's a frickin' archaic system. It's a system invented, you know, hundreds of years ago, when, you know, it took 2 days to go 20 miles. You know, where there were, you know, no computers, I mean, just a completely different reality we lived in, and we can do so much more in terms of representing people and creating a more direct democracy, but more importantly, a more representative democracy. I'm not for direct democracy only in the sense that if you tried to write legislation for the average dope, yeah, it's just going to be garbage legislation. It'll just say insane things like buy me lots of stuff, but don't make me pay for anything for anybody else. That's the bills all look like that. Put it in somebody else's backyard. I mean, there won't be anything rational in the policy. So in a sense, you do have to have people who know how to. It's almost like the necessity, the evil necessity of lawyers. You do need some people who have some sort of understanding of the principles involved and the methods of argumentation. You can't just let any asshole, go in and say, I think I win because I think I have better stuff to say I win with. I mean, just who wants to be wasting time with people who say crazy, the reptilians say I should win this case, That's not gonna, no point in running a country that way. Anyway, so that would be the second reform. So first you got to get the instant runoff voting thing. And like I said, the game is basically just to get enough people to support you, where you go up to one of the political parties, both of them, and you say to them, look, this is the deal. My votes, my 3 million people, will vote for you, even though they hate you. We'll vote for you if you guarantee us an up or down vote in the Congress on this bill. Or some other catch like that. You just make it clear that we're going to have a contract, public contract, and we're going to assert certain, we're going to oblige you to behave a certain way, and to fill your side of the contract, and we'll call that acceptable for this round, and that'll be the round for this election, and then the next election comes and you push another agenda. But this is the only way you have to assert, because the system isn't going to give you, it's not going to pay attention to you unless you do blackmail it. The two-party system has no principles. They don't want to hear about what the right thing to do is. They will only do what they have to do. And they almost find it annoying if you want to do something that has something other to do with them making them rich. They're all just sellouts and creeps. And the only way you can bargain with these fuckers is hard. You got to go in there with, you got to play hardball. If you want to get anything done in this world, you're going to have to extort the criminals and to get it done. But the good news is if you do a couple of these things, you can have a real game. And once the real game starts, all kinds of good things can happen. So that's where you got to start. So then, I guess the platform, you want to try to keep the party platform simple, just so you don't offend anybody. To get as much support as possible. So you first have these two really, really benign, really hard to argue against. Really, I mean, just it really is. Unless you're an overt cheater, a person who believes in stealing other people's votes, stealing their right to representation, you really can't defend the flaws in the current system and these simple fixes. And it sort of does represent the theme of the damn thing, which is, what's missing in this the systems we have is they're very unscientific, unprincipled, and we don't have the expectation that their objective is not some sort of perfect efficiency. And that's sort of what this third party should stand for, is some idea of let's achieve a more perfect efficiency. Let's get the most out of ourselves and out of the system. Let's scientifically construct this thing to work, not to fail. And that's the same kind of approach as looking at everything else. Why is it broken? And, fix it, and then find a way to keep it fixed, in the sense that, that's another easy one. It's just this idea of accountability. We have we have accepted politicians who run on a platform of don't hold me accountable. Change the rules so you can't sue me. I should play by different rules than you play by. They overtly get away with that because you're always trading off, them against each other. And so as soon as both parties become corrupt, you're going to be out of luck, because both of them are going to give you no choice on the issue of accountability. because they're both running away from it. They've both decided that it's more fun for them to be crooks, and they'll just play us as a way of getting what they want, to satisfy their individual ambitions. I mean, Obama didn't want to be president because he knew what he was doing, because he had a plan. None of that shit had anything to do with it. He wanted to be president because he has a big, giant ego. And he wanted to be painted on the wall somewhere and maybe have his picture on a coin someday. But it had nothing to do with him having any vision thing, because obviously he hasn't had a clue from day one. He never even gave Guantanamo Bay enough thought to actually think about, well, if I release these guys, they might become terrorists again. Yeah, he never didn't even think that far. I mean, it's just an amazing when you think about how little thought, how unprepared these people are for the job, and you think they can just walk into it and they're going to be doing the right thing. And then they surround themselves with these dyed-in-the-wool, tired old politicians that have been around forever, talking the same yammer, about, some special interest, how we should feed them more. Oh, the poor teachers, and the teachers do well. Oh, they're teachers, and no, sorry, no sale. But you can go on down the list. So anyway, speaking of that, though, that would probably, like I said, you want to keep these policies simple, but I think, one of the policies that might be worth throwing in there is the transition, or at least the option of running a trial or a test, of a system where you pay the majority of the money for education goes to the students rather than to the teachers and to the industrial complex. Especially in the modern age, it's just totally idiotic to have to pay these. I call them performance artists, but that's all they are. Teachers are just performance artists who want to get paid a real high salary to do the same performance over and over and over and over again for a selected audience. And we ought to just public domain them out of business. Get the best little performance artists in the world, put them on videotape, and be done with this. Pay me every week to do the same shit I did the week before, and the week before that, and the week before that. It's just nonsense. It's just incredibly inefficient. And do it in this atmosphere of forcing food down a kid's throat, rather than making them hungry, rather than putting carrots in front of them and giving them the incentive to chase those carrots and in the process become edified. I mean, that's the real game. Yeah, if somebody didn't pay you to go to work, you wouldn't go to work, and you know it. You'd hate your job, and you know it. It just really is silly for people to think that they're going to get the most out of their education dollar by force-feeding kids, by essentially institutionalizing them in a prison they don't want to be in for a reward they're never going to see. That's really stupid. So anyway, that's just one of the subjects. But again, it's this whole efficiency thing. So whether you get to all kinds of government policies. I mean, generally speaking, I think there's a decent balance between libertarianism, the idea of social liberty, and accountability. This idea of a responsibility party that basically just says, look, once you fulfill your responsibilities, everything else is yours. All the rest are rights. So as long as you can have your liberal right to use drugs, you just have to first fulfill your responsibility not to kill somebody on drugs. So as long as you give us the right to test you, as long as you give us the right to protect ourselves from you flying an airplane hungover, who cares? Yeah, do whatever you want. So, this idea of being responsible, having the camera on, being accountable, especially government employees and the rest of these crooks and thieves, we should be responsible. We should be willing to accept that may will be surveilled in our activities in exchange for extra liberty. That's how you get extra liberty. I mean, that's one of the ironies of the whole anarchy debate, is these idiots think you're liberated by taking away the rules. But if you think about it for just a little tiny bit, you can realize that rules about people having safe cars on the road save your life. They don't kill you. These are things that are, having police and some laws and fingerprints and all that kind of stuff keeps your kids from getting raped and murdered. And that you really wouldn't want to have to individually think about that and worry about that and have to hire your own security guards. You don't want to have to build a moat around your house and do all this other crap. That's not liberty. You're not liberated by destroying responsibility. You are, in fact, liberated by creating accountability. And the whole point of this third party would be to recognize those balances and recognize that all we're really trying to do as good umpires, and that's what we're trying to do, is we're just all trying to think like the umpire. Think like somebody who cares about the game. Doesn't just care about their players, doesn't just care about themselves, but thinks, what makes it a good game? What rule changes do we make in the game to make it a nice, fair, even contest? To do is the best we can to create a good sport. And that's really the objective. And so when it comes to the economy, I don't think it would be a bold statement to say that, the first value is the worker. The worker. Yeah, that's the first thing you worry about, is the welfare of the worker, the fairness to the worker. And everything else builds out from there. Obviously, it's in the worker's interest to have a place to work, but it's in the consumer's interest that the only thing they're working on isn't some scam, isn't writing small print, and designing cans to, psychologically fuck with our head. Being gamed, by whole industries whose only purpose is to trick us. Why would we want to support an economy that isn't making anything, that isn't innovating, that isn't improving, but they're just the only thing that's evolving, the only thing that's getting better and more insidious is their way to fool, their ability to fool us, to trick us, to pull the rug out from under us, kind of thing. To small print us and pop culture us into submission to paying them to fuck with us, to pay them not to serve us, but to trick us, to fool us, to hurt us, to profit off of us, to exploit us. Those are just, as a general theme. It's hard to, I could just say, okay, yeah, you have to have some kind of thing where, it doesn't make much sense to subsidize the wealthy, and excessively burden the working person. So, there'd be a progressive understanding that there's not much point in incentivizing things that don't produce value, and there's a huge incentive to incentivize things that do produce value. And again, I'm going to argue that the innovation comes from having overqualified employees who think and can do things better and improve how they do things, and innovate and all of that kind of stuff. And all that comes from the people. And currently we're just the pay balance is out of balance. We're paying the hair, more than the brain, and there's no point in doing that. But like I said, you have to be careful how you word that, because if you say anything a little too strong, the people, oh, you mean you're not gonna subsidize the rich, and you're not gonna let people inherit billions of dollars, and you're not gonna, and it's very disappointing that people think that way. There's some kind of tyranny to try to create fairness and a good game, because they've been cheating so long that they have no conception of good game anymore. You know, they're just so used to the elitists having advantage, you know, that they don't want to play in a real arena. They don't want to have to earn it. They've been living off the cheat, and they want to keep the cheats. It's just like you know, mortgage deductions, you know, all kinds of different tax dodges they have that are totally unfair to people who, you know, don't go into debt. So you essentially reward people for debt and punish people who find debt obnoxious. You know, simple little things like that, but they're all over the place in terms of our politics and the system we've created. We're encouraging a lot of bad behavior rather than encouraging good behavior. And those are some kind of simple policy changes that, in the long run, you know, I think could make a huge difference in the quality of our civilization. Yeah, big change. Anyway, I mean, you really, theoretically, you know, we could have a 5-hour workday easy, without any trouble, and still be just as productive as we are now. And if we kept our 8-hour workday, we could be twice as productive. We're just wasting so much human energy in absolute nonsense. And somebody should at least make that commentary and at least offer a proposal to do something about it. And the two-party system right now is totally ignoring it. They're pretending it doesn't exist. And they're doing it by, you know, just placating people's bigotry on one side, and the other side is placating their sympathy. You know, doing all this, oh, the poor people can't help it kind of crap. You know, and it's just, you know, both sides are just, it's just so lame, the scapegoating going on from the right, and the, you know, blame diverting going on the left. So, yeah, probably this is all I need to do with this video. I'm not doing much cleaning, so there's really no point to me doing this if I can't. I need my other hand, I suppose. Yeah, I really shouldn't need two hands, but apparently I do. That just might be because I'm distracted. Jesus. It is strange how this, holding this camera, you know, this having your arm up thing, is really, yeah, it's revealing the weakness that exists in my lower back. I mean, it's, you know, it isn't bad, but it's just funny how that movement is indicating to me that I need to do some work on my back. Anyway, till next time and such.